Everybody, welcome back to the Nitty Gritty of Real Estate podcast. So today we're talking about out-of-the-box living and ADUs. Let's get into it. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the Nitty Gritty of Real Estate podcast. I'm here with Tom Krieger, the head of the TJK team. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Joe.
So we see a really big trend catching on, and that's ADUs. So what is an ADU, just to start out with?
Well, an ADU is basically a small secondary home on a piece of land. Now, it's not a duplex, okay? It's just an alternative place to live, okay? A lot of times we used to call them mother-in-law suites, grandma's houses, guest quarters. So there are many different names, but the reality of it is it's just another living space that is separate from the primary property building.
Okay, and just to be specific to the acronym ADU stands for Accessory Dwelling Unit, or additional, I've heard, dwelling unit as
Yes.
well. Just so the alphabet soup doesn't catch you up there.
We don't want to, but also it's not to have a stove in it, and that's how they separate it. If you have a stove in it, like a kitchen, it becomes a duplex, and if it's not zoned for duplex or multifamily use, you're in violation of code things. So you don't want to do that.
Okay. So ADU kind of can cover maybe a wider variety than you think, like the type of dwelling itself being a tiny home, which we consider perhaps on wheels, something that is maybe less permanent. Correct? Is that kind of how you
So
interpret
a tiny home is actually a home, and unfortunately people confuse a tiny home with an ADU. A tiny home is actually a home. It has the cooking arrangements in it with a stove. So if you're going to purchase a tiny home, you have to remove the stove aspect of the tiny home to be able to put it on the property. Otherwise, again, you're in violation of zoning laws. And now here in Tucson, Arizona, our zoning laws duplexes are R2s, usually residential duplex dwellings, where you can have two separate living spaces that are functional as homes with the kitchen fully furnished, including a stove. You can also have two units on a single family residence as long as there's not a kitchen that has a functional stove in it. It can have a sink, it can have a small refrigerator, but it can't have a place to cook. That's the defining factor in making it a ADU or a duplex.
Okay. And now just to touch on that again, we see local municipalities beginning to be more flexible with some of that zoning because of the demand for housing, correct?
Yeah, and unfortunately that is the case, and it's because of the influx of people coming into our country. We are going to need changes in zoning laws, and governments are going to have to learn to accept that. And people who live in these communities are going to have to learn to live with that. And common sense here, would you rather have somebody have an ADU where they could house people, or would you rather have tents on the street in your neighborhood?
Sure.
Let's make at least the living arrangements for these people humane. So I believe the pressure is going to come for municipalities to start opening up swaths of land to put tiny homes on that have kitchens.
Yeah.
And you can actually live there. Similar to what they have in like mobile parks, where the manufactured home is not affixed. You just basically pull your mobile home, and it's mobile because it's still on an axle and wheels, and park it, and you're just renting the space and the hookups.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. So I guess it kind of goes into the modular home. We were going to kind of touch on the different types of out-of-the-box sort of living, quote unquote.
And modular homes are great. And again, you can bring these onto the property. The qualifier is removing the stove out. That's the qualifier. You can't be cooking in there like dinners. Obviously, if you had a hot plate or if you had a microwave or something like that, but they don't want you making it, quote, quote, a livable for like a family.
Yeah.
Because we're in a duplex. But
baking cookies maybe.
Yeah. But not making turkey dinners for Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, modular homes, you can get all different types of modular homes, and what they really are component homes.
Yep.
A modular home is where they comes in 3 or 4 sections, 5 sections, depending on how big it is. It could actually be one section too, where they comes in on a flatbed trailer. The flatbed trailer pulls up, the crane picks it up, it's got hooks on it and where you can lift it without damaging the property. You come and set it. Now, you'll set it on a slab, and the slab will have the electrical brought in. And if it is a full modular home, it'll have the plumbing hooked up. If it's a semi livable home, meaning there isn't a kitchen in there, then they'll still have the plumbing hooked up because you still need a toilet and you still need to have sinks to wash your hands and a sink in the quote food prep area. We normally would say that's a kitchen, right?
Right.
And then you set her down, you hook her up, and you're ready to go. You got grandma's place there, and then grandma can come across the yard into the house to have Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. So this is more of a communal living type idea, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right, Joe. And then when you go from modular homes, there's things called 3D printed homes. And people are going, what the heck is that? Well, that's very interesting. It's not the 3D printed homes that you see when they're making plastic guns or stuff like that.
Sure.
These are homes that are printed with concrete. Okay, so they have a concrete dispenser, and it is hooked into a truck with an arm that allows the concrete to go through, and they just print the floor plan, the exterior floor plan, over and over again. They just lay row upon row of concrete on top of each other. Then when they get to a window that stops, they insert the window, and then they keep laying the concrete around and around until they get to the top of the window, and then they make the entire circumference again. So printed homes can be very useful in the desert here because they're concrete. And they're great insulators. They are inexpensive to build, and they can be built real quickly. Hey everyone, we want to interrupt this episode to let you know that we are a Keller Williams Southern Arizona franchise.
We are also realtors practicing equal housing. Now let's get you back to the podcast. Sure, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that happening up in Eloy, kind of a city in between here in Tucson.
And Phoenix.
And Phoenix, yeah. I'm sorry, between here and Phoenix, that was the right thing to say, where they 3D print these homes. They do it in a quicker amount of time. It's less expensive, and it takes a third of the manpower that it would take a traditional stick-built home. Which is, I foresee that as a win for the industry because we're so short on housing that if we could build in a quicker amount of time a home to live in, that seems like a win to me.
Yeah.
So now I think the next portion of this, if someone buys land, I think that's probably something that they may have in the back of their brain. If I buy land and I do a small ADU or tiny home, modular home, 3D printed home, for instance, how would you start going about doing that and purchasing land and then maybe thinking about building something on there?
Well, like with any project, you want to start with the end in mind. What am I trying to accomplish, right? Am I trying to accomplish just a inexpensive way to own a home? Am I trying to accomplish, I want a certain view that isn't available in subdivisions right now?
Yeah.
Am I trying to accomplish, I want to be outside of the normal living dynamic that is in a city? I'd like to be, away from everybody. I'm a hermit, or I don't relate with people very well. I'm better off left alone. Maybe I got some PTSD, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So come up with that end product and then move to the beginning. So let's say we'll make this scenario up. Okay, I'm a veteran and I got PTSD, and it's not good for me to be around people because I basically have issues. So, but I really would like my adult son or my adult daughter to live close to me so I can protect them. But they don't want to live with me in the same house. Then I want to find a parcel of land that's big enough for me to put a home on it, and a parcel of land that's big enough to allow another dwelling to be put on it, okay? So that's important. Now, if I'm going to try and save as much money as possible, maybe a 3D printed home will be the cheapest, maybe not, depending on the transfer time of the concrete trucks coming and going. You got to look at that factor. So it may be better, I want to buy a tiny home and pull the kitchen part out of it, right? And so I'll live in the tiny home, and I'll let my daughter live in the bigger home, and then I can just come in and have dinner when it's appropriate for me to have dinner.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. When you're invited, right?
Yeah, when I'm invited. Or
Don't bust in.
It may be that I'm going to have this house there, but I'm so far out, I got to figure out, where am I getting the electricity from? How much is it going to cost me to pull electricity from a quarter mile away? You know, it may not be profitable at all to do something like that.
Sure.
So you may want to talk about living off the grid, where you have solar. Everything is solar, and everything is saved in batteries. You have gas generators or LP generators, okay? You may want to find out about what's it going to cost to drill a well, because there's no water service out there. Okay, how much is it going to be for a septic system, right? So if I'm going to have an ADU, what's it going to take to put the septic system in? Or does the ADU have its own storage tank underground, which they're really shying away from those. They used to be a big thing, but they're really shying away from those. So these are all the things that you've got to take into consideration before you go down that route.
Okay. So let's say they went down that route.
Okay.
And they built their home. Let's say they 3D printed their home.
Yep.
And then they kind of maybe fudged some of the wastewater, for instance, if they didn't get a licensed
sanitarian,
to come in and install their wastewater system, and then they go to sell it. What sort of problems, if they sort of wildcatted some of the stuff in, what sort of problems do you see arising in that upon reselling? Or like, let's say the owner passed away and it went to their kids, and then they go, well, let's sell this, and they didn't know that, you know, their parent or significant other, whoever it was, didn't put in things the right way.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, in that scenario, they may have put an outhouse in. Okay, so they may have on the land just dug a pit, just what an outhouse is, and they used it outside the house. They didn't have the money, or chose not to, or whatever reason, to put a what we call a standard septic system.
Yeah.
Problems being is transferring a livable property.
Yeah.
You can't transfer a property that's not livable.
Right. And that's considered not livable.
Right.
Because there is no bathroom.
Right.
Right.
And if you are creating a outhouse, you need to get permits for that too. You can't just do your thing in the ground here, okay? Yeah. The other aspect is lending, okay? So if you have this place and it's not hooked up to a septic system, it's not going to be lendable, right? Yeah.
And maybe possibly insurable.
Yeah.
So, which is even worse if you want to protect
the
your
value
house.
Of your asset. Yeah. Most of the time, though, I think people are smart enough to realize I need a septic system, I need water, I need electricity. Those are the three basics
and
that you need.
Those are expensive to put in.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that already to a property that you're looking at, or land, just land on its own, it may be something out of your range. You might find a $70,000 plot of land, which looks really good, you know, let's say 40 acres and 70,000. Perfect. Let's go buy this. But then, like you're saying, it's, you know, 40 miles away from.
So let me give you an example. So we have an agent on our team who has a friend who found this great deal for land, and he didn't call the agent. He just went and bought it from this old timer, paid him, I think it was like $45,000. And he's like, this is a great deal. And I think it was like 8 or 10 acres. So he's thinking, okay, this is a great deal. You know, I got a ton of acreage for a really good price. I'll just have the electricity brought in. $150,000 to bring the electricity in. Whew. So what did the lot really cost him?
Yeah.
Almost $200,000.
Yeah. Hard pill to swallow there.
Hard pill to swallow. Whew. So he's just got this piece of land that he's put in his IRA. Okay, and we jokingly call it an IRA because he can't touch it until they build out that way. And he may end up passing that on to his kids or his grandkids before they get out there far enough with electricity.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Or you come into a windfall and then you pay for it.
It's I would just sell the land and for whatever I could get for the land. But the correct thing would have been to contact the real estate agent. I mean, we do have value.
Right. Right.
We do have value.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think we do until they make a mistake like that.
Right.
Or unfortunately, sometimes we're going a little off stream here, but people think they can sell their house by themselves, right? And they end up selling it, and I saved 6%. Yeah, but you sold it for 15% below what it should have sold for, so you really lost 9%.
Yeah, and a lot of the statistics point towards them not making near as much money as they could when they have someone fighting for them.
And so bring that to what we're talking about ADUs.
Yeah.
You put this tiny home on with the stove in there, and the next thing you know, you've got the county saying you have to remove that thing.
Right. Right.
And now they're not going to give you a grace period, even if you move the stove out, because you intend the principle behind it is you intentionally tried to make this a duplex.
Yeah. And we can't claim ignorance to the law.
No, ignorance of the law does not excuse us from the law.
Yep.
Right. So ADUs are great. Spend some time doing your research. Talk with a real estate agent. Maybe go down to the assessor's office. Go down to zoning.
Yep.
Or have your agent do that,
Yep.
because that's what you hire them for.
Yep.
Make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. But ADUs can be another source of income too.
Yeah.
Because if you have students and you're by a university, students don't mind. They don't mind eating out of microwaves. I mean, they're just glad to get food, right?
Right.
I mean, ramen noodles, they cook real well in the microwave,
That's right. Yeah.
My
I think
daughter,
we've all been there.
My daughter told me many times about ramen noodles, and I was like, why didn't you come home? Well, because you live 90 miles away, Dad. It's okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, thank you, Tom, for all those knowledge bombs that you've dropped on us here. And,
well, reach out to us. You know, our contact information's below. We can give free advice out and let you know what we know to help you make a decision. And we are always happy to do that.
Yeah, and if you're outside of this area, I think a good thing to keep in mind is we can find an agent who can help you discover all of this stuff. We may not have all of the information in your area since we're licensed here in Arizona, but we can find a great agent who can basically help you discover all of these things that we talked about today.
Yeah, because we are connected to over 5,000 highly trained agents throughout the United States.
That is absolutely true. So if you found this valuable, any of this knowledge valuable, please feel free to like and share. Subscribe to our podcast here. We're everywhere that you can download a podcast, you'll find us. And we're also on YouTube. So, let us know too if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening and watching the Nitty Gritty of Real Estate podcast here with the Tom J. Krieger team of Keller Williams, Southern Arizona. If you are interested in buying a home, selling a home, or even investing in real estate, we have 5,000 agents across the country that we can connect you to. If you need any free resources, feel free to check out our website at www.thetjkteam.com. We hope you have a great day.